Hey guys, so I decided to make a series of videos talking about some things while I still had the chance. If you don't know about my current situation right now, then I would recommend watching some of my previous videos so you can understand what's going on and why I'm doing this. But it's really late at night, I couldn't go to sleep, and I thought I'd make some videos talking about some things that I thought that I felt like I wanted to get out there while I still had the chance. And in this video, I just thought I would talk about one of the biggest things I regret in my life. So I recently, before this video, I just finished making a video about my childhood and how a lot of my childhood was pretty much dominated by a lot of the tests and drugs that I had to be put under, growing up. And it really affected my life. I didn't really have a lot of free will, if you want to call it that. Because I'd always when I was on the medication, I never felt like I wanted to do anything. It pretty much just shut down my personality, and I never wanted to do anything. I never wanted to talk. I wanted nothing. I felt nothing, and I just never said anything. But I remember in middle school one day that kind of changed. Because it really, medication really shut down my emotions, so I didn't really have a lot of emotions growing up. But I remember when I was in middle school that kind of changed, because what happened, and I remember this day very clearly. One day, I was walking through the hallways, at school. I was in 6th grade, I believe. And up until this point, I didn't really have any emotions. I didn't really express any emotions. Even now, because of the medication, I don't express emotions, like a normal person should, because I feel like one of the permanent side effects of the medication that I took every single day, just growing up, one of those permanent side effects was emotions really don't register. I just don't express emotions normally, and emotions don't really express on my face like a normal person should. So I could be afraid, happy, or scared, but you would never be able to tell just by the look on my face, because it's just one of those permanent side effects. But I remember one day I was walking through the hallways, and I just sort of stopped in the middle of the hallway, and it's like something inside me just sort of clicked. And I had this idea, because like I said, up until this point I didn't really feel anything in terms of emotions. But I remember one day I just sort of snapped out of it. Something happened inside me, and it was just like this awakening. I don't know what it was about this day or what it was, but I felt like something, it was something spiritual inside me that something just clicked inside me. And I realized that, up until this point, I wasn't feeling anything. And I remember thinking to myself, I kind of want to learn what it's like to have this emotional attachment to someone. And actually, I kind of want to know what it's like to fall in love. I want to know what it's like to feel emotions and fall in love. I wanted to love something. I didn't care what it was. I just wanted to feel love in general. I wanted to love something. I wanted to have feel an attachment to something, because I'd never felt an emotional attachment to anything before up until that point. From that moment on, I just started searching in my life, for things to have feelings about. I was searching for something to have feelings. I was searching for emotions, feelings. I wanted something to trigger something, because I wanted to feel feelings. So for the next few days, I started searching, just in my everyday life. I just was searching for something. I didn't know what it was, but I was just searching for something. And I believe it was 3 days later or something, after this awakening, this new girl comes to my school. And at first, I walk into my classroom, that morning, I see this new girl there, and at first I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, it's a new girl. But what happened was, I think maybe it was that same day, I think an acquaintance of mine, because I didn't have a lot of friends, at that time. But I did, there were people who would talk to me, every now and again, that I would talk to. But I wasn't really friends with anyone. but I remember an acquaintance of mine, introduced her to me, and she's like, hey, have you met, so-and-so? They basically introduced me to them, and I said, hey, what's up? And I still don't think anything of it. They were just another person. But I remember, like, as I got to know her, I remember I started to feel something that I'd never felt before. And eventually, I didn't know it at first, but I remember that I really didn't understand, what I was feeling, because I'd never felt anything before. I'd never experienced, friendship or anything like that. But after a while, I'm just gonna speed things along just a little bit. Fast forward like a year or so, and we became, best friends. We had this group of, friends, and we were like a family, and it was the first time that I ever had gotten to feel a friendship. I'd never felt what it's like to have friendship before, so I remember it was just like this immense love that I'd never felt before, to finally be able to feel like someone cared about me. And I remember I also ended up like falling in love with this girl. And I know that's a strong thing to say, but it's just really hard to describe the things that I felt. And she meant everything to me. She in particular really meant everything to me. I loved being with my friends, but I really loved being with her the most. And I really didn't like being away from her. I wanted to be with her all the time, and it was just this love that I'd never felt before. I'd felt, when I was with her, I felt, happy. And for the first time in my life, I was feeling, emotions, emotions that I'd previously been pretty much locked, and like a locked door to me because of the medication I was taking. But when I was with her, it was like all that went away. And it was just this immense feeling of love and happiness that I'd never, even to this day, I've never felt before. But to condense this sort of long story, because I could talk forever about, what happened, here. One of my biggest regrets is that I never told her how I felt. What happened was our friendship was very short-lived. It lasted for a couple of years, and then like around like, I don't know, what was it, like in 8th grade, I think, our friendship started, in the beginning it felt like our friendship would never fall apart. It felt like, we would all be together forever, and it was just, we were like a family. But eventually what ended up happening though, I don't know what caused this, but there started to be disagreements between people in our group, and people started falling apart. One of them moved away, and little by little people started falling apart with each other. And I'm not going to go into the details of what exactly happened, but over time we started to fall apart, and there were a lot of things that I really regret doing when I was in the middle of experiencing all this. But I would say one of the biggest things I regret was not telling her how I felt and not being honest with her about my feelings. Because if I had to go back right now, the first thing I would do is I would tell her how I felt. And I just really regret that I never got to do that. It was the first time I got to feel love and have emotions and feel this emotional connection to something, just to something. It was more than I could ever put into words. And I just regret that I was never brave enough to say anything. Because once she drifted away from me, our relationship just sort of fell apart, and it's hard to describe, but when eventually everyone, well, not everyone, some of us stayed together, but she eventually went off and did her own thing, and so through high school we were never really that close. She was always with a new group of friends doing her own thing, and I always was just very heartbroken the fact that I never told her, and she never knew about how I felt. And I tried to tell her throughout high school. There were times when I really tried to tell her, but I just always ended up failing. And things were just never the same after like 8th grade. You know, we fell apart, and I just really regret, you know, not telling her. And it really broke my heart when, you know, everyone that I cared about basically, you know, fell apart. They always started doing their own things. Some people moved. And what really broke my heart the most was when she decided to go do her own thing, and I never got to tell her. And I remember at graduation, you know, I haven't seen her since graduation. You know, I graduated in 2016, and I remember graduation day. That was the last time I saw her. And I remember when everyone went outside the school right after, you know, the graduation ceremony, everyone threw their hats in the air, and then in the crowd, I was like looking for everyone, you know, going through everyone, you know, this big crowd, looking for her because I wanted to tell her, because I was afraid that I would never see her again. I never found her in the crowd, and so eventually I had to leave, you know, not being able to finally tell her. And so to this day, I've never she'll never know like how I truly felt. And I'd say that had to be the most heartbreaking thing that I have ever felt. Losing someone that you love and care about, and never being able to really be honest with them and finally tell them what you want to tell them. And even to this day, you know, I still think about her a lot, and I think about a lot about what she's doing, because the love that I had for her never faded because it was that strong. I know that it was a love unlike anything else. It was really a once in a lifetime thing that I've never felt anything like it. And I never felt that same way, that same love ever again towards anyone else. So that had to be one of the biggest things that I regret, is not being honest with her from the very beginning. And just telling her, if I could go back in time and, you know, do one thing differently, I would have gone back in time and just been honest with her, even if it's just something as simple as just saying like, hey, I like you. Then I would have taken that any day, because my advice to anyone, if you're in a similar situation, is that if you really like someone, then you should tell them. Don't do like what I did and like be afraid to say something. Honestly, at the time, when we were still together, you know, I honestly didn't care whether or not we were anything more than friends, because I just loved her so much. This love that I had was just so strong that I didn't mind just being friends. As long as I could see them every day and be near them every day, then I was happy, because that's just how much I loved her. I didn't care if we were together or not. I just loved her so much that I just wanted to be with her and near her, even if it was just as a friend. And so at the time, I didn't feel like it was necessary for me to tell her how I felt. Even though I really wanted to, I just felt like it didn't really matter until eventually I ended up losing her. And you know, we didn't have, you know, the same relationship that we used to have. And I especially started feeling, you know, this regret and pain after, you know, graduation, you know, after, you know, the last time I saw her. And that has to be one of the worst pain that I've ever felt, and it still is. So thank you for watching this video, and hope I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.